Welcome to the Mystery College Podcast. Today we're interviewing with Austin Sanderson of Urban Sadhu Yoga. He's got an amazing upcoming 300-hour course at the prestigious Omega Institute. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's wonderful having you on. So, Urban Sadhu Yoga blends ancient wisdom, the yogic wisdom, with some contemporary context and understanding. Could you share the story behind the inception of the Urban Sadhu Guru, or Urban Sadhu Yoga and its foundational philosophy?
Sure. I'm gonna also just click off my mail so I don't get that little ding. So when I'd been teaching yoga for about 25 years. I was with a very popular brand here on the East Coast. It was a brand that's also very popular in Europe. We parted ways for a number of reasons. I still love the lineage that I came out of, and I love the things they taught me. But while I was teaching under their banner, I was also studying with other teachers. And that broadened my perception of what yoga could be and how it should be presented. So when we left, it was right at the pandemic, and so we were shut down on the East Coast for about a year, and I had the opportunity to really go through and sit with myself and create some things that I wanted to present to the world that my other teachers were presenting to me. And figuring out ways of how I can present them in a presentation that they would work for the modern practitioner. And this is where the name Urban Sadhu came up. Sadhu is a holy person or a person who is a renunciate, and urban being city dwellers. Most of us dwell in cities, a lot of us dwell in cities. And I always think there's like a great need for spiritual teachings in urban areas, much more so than if you live in, the rural pastoral areas. You have like a little piece there. Urban areas can be like, rocking the whole time, and you need to find peace and inner peace. So the Urban Sadhu method is looking at these ancient yogic texts, honoring them, but then how can we apply them in our modern paradigm that we're in now? How can we use them to really transcend the problems that humanity is being faced with right now?
Yeah. And so the Urban Sadhu method also incorporates like a variety of different yogic practices like Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So
Yes.
how do you balance these diverse traditions in the teachings? And why is this integrative approach important to Urban Sadhu Yoga?
So like you said, it's an integrative approach. We're integrating many different traditions, and we're integrating it in a way that when we train teachers on how to present that to the students. So it's not just kind of like you have a certain group of people over here who are gatekeeping this information, and you haven't figured out a way to present it to the students. We do it through a number of ways. We always have an expiration of the month. I usually write the expiration of the month. So there's a specific topic that we're talking about that month, and all the teachers are kind of doing a little bit of a discourse in class. It usually is attached to either a mantra or a sloka or a sutra. So it gives it some foundational ideas. That's the ancient teachings. And then the class should also be built around that expiration for that month. So what you'll also find is that within yoga, different people are going to be attracted to different aspects. Some people are going to be attracted to Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. Some people are going to be first attracted to Hatha Yoga, physical practice. So many of us come to yoga through physical asana, right? And they may stay there a while. Or some people may come to it through karma yoga or japa, meditation, some other form. One form shouldn't be better than the other. One form shouldn't be looked at as superior to the other, because we're all trying to get to the same place in our practice, but we may take different routes to get to that space. So the Urban Sadhu Yoga method tries very much to support all of the practitioners on their sadhana, and give them the support they need in terms of that. So as an Urban Sadhu Yoga teacher is a very diverse thinking teacher. There's a lot of diversity in their thought process.
A lot of diversity in the thought process. And being like spiritual activism is mentioned as a key component of the Urban Sadhu method.
Yes.
Can you share what that means in the context of yoga practice or being a Urban Sadhu teacher?
Absolutely. So when I once saw a wonderful interview with Krishnamurti, filmed like in the early 60s, and it was a very short snippet, and he said ancient yogis only cared about one thing, and that was ethical living. And that was the end of that little snippet of film. And I thought, wow, that is so deep. That's like a really deep concept, that before any of this other stuff takes place, the one thing that we have to be concerned about as yogis is ethical living. And ethical living is really learning to live in harmony both with those around us, with nature, with the environment. It's not walking away from the activist role, but it's performing that role as a spiritual being and calling on your higher power to guide you to activism, not your anger, not your frustration, not your otherness, but to really use the platform of your ethical living to uplift the lives of other beings around you. So that's what being a spiritual activist is really about, is how can I use these practices in my personal life, but then expand out from what I'm doing personally to uplift the lives in the world itself. And it may just be something very tiny. It doesn't have to be a big, huge gesture. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes that modern yoga has made, that we feel like we got to save the world after a down dog. That's not going to happen. But you, with the right intention, doing that down dog could change your vibration. And then when you walk out of the yoga studio or off your mat, your changed vibration could affect somebody else or another being in a positive way. So when we think about great spiritual activists, like Martin Luther King, like Mahatma Gandhi, nonviolence, the ability to have discourse with those that you don't agree with, and still love them unconditionally, even though you disagree with them. That's hard. But that's what yoga teaches us.
Yeah, being able to hold space, hold the ground, and holding love for things and parts of ourselves or society that maybe even adversarial to our sense of ethics and what we know could be better.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering too.
Yeah, and that you don't understand.
That I don't understand.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that begs a question for me about like harm reduction too, because sometimes in life, we may have like a gasoline car, we're burning through fuel, we have a carbon footprint. Some of us eat meat, others don't. So I'm wondering if it like not everything works in black and white. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of nuance in life, and so I'm wondering what's the yogic approach to harm reduction in that case?
So I think that like this is the kind of thing that this is where that idea of ancient wisdom applied to a modern context. Lord Krishna never had to deal with a gasoline car. And he didn't have to deal with, modern agriculture, or he didn't have to deal with the plastic, or he didn't have to deal with many of the other environmental problems that we have. We're having to deal with them because of our actions and our karma. But what we can do is we can look back at these teachings and realize that there may be some nugget of wisdom there to help us sit. Because the only way we're going to solve these problems is first sit there with ourselves and really ask ourselves in concentration and thought, what should I do? What is the ethical thing for myself? How am I going to deal with this? So I have one friend who he refuses to take any plastics from any store. He even ran a restaurant for a number of years. He had no plastics. It was a plastic-free restaurant. So he would go and he would get the vegetables that were coming in plastic. He would take the plastic off there at the distributor. He would leave it. He would repackage everything. And it was really amazing. And it created a level of work for him, but he really was able to use his restaurant as a platform of how much plastic a single restaurant is putting out if they have plastic utensils, plastic forks, plastic to deliver food in. And so he took on a new action. It was karma yoga is what it was. He took on an action that he eliminated plastics. When you talk about the eating of meat, I do promote veganism within the Urban Sadhu yoga method. Personally, I think that like looking at your diet and looking at what you're consuming as diet is the quickest way to become an activist. If I'm not financially supporting something that I disagree with, I'm protesting. So whether you're protesting the meat industry because of the cruelty to the animals, whether you are protesting because of the hormones that they're putting into meat, if you're protesting because of the steroids they're putting into milk, if you're protesting because of the quality control of it, whatever reason you're protesting, if you're still buying it, your protest is meaningless. So one of the easiest ways to start to really create a kind of ethical living in your own personal life, and this may be the small way, is to re-look at how you've been programmed to identify with food and rethink that and see that, one, you've had a system that's programmed you to consume food in a way that you're disconnected from it. You have no idea where it's grown, whether it's plant-based or animal-based, that you don't question what's in it, and that you actually you're so disconnected from it, you can't even figure out when it's killing you. So this is where yoga really taps into that ability. It's a word in yoga called swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is self-study. And when Patanjali uses the word swadhyaya, he's talking about studying of the soul or that little spark within you of divinity. But swadhyaya has to start on a grosser level, right? So let me study my actions, yamas and niyamas. That's what yamas and niyamas are. Let me study my gross actions. How am I affecting those around me? How am I affecting myself internally? Yamas and niyamas. So that's taking ancient wisdom and applying it in a modern context. And then realizing I'm not going to save the world, but I can change the way that I'm acting in the world, and that one action is going to have a cause and effect on other elements within the world. Because I'm one less person I'm not buying pork chops. I'm not buying milk. I'm not buying cheese. So that's one less person that's contributing to those industries that are really harming the environment, harming the animals, harming human health.
And yeah, and that's beautiful, and I really appreciate that harm reductive approach. I see that is both empowering and contextualizes the complexity of the worlds, and allows us to take action in some sense, in some areas by inaction, by not supporting things economically or with our attention, and with other things just putting our money and our time and energy towards things that are accumulative, like having a vegetarian, vegan diet, things that are harm reductive, that lower the carbon footprint. That's awesome.
And always remember that in yoga, an inaction is an action. That may be like a misconception within the West or American yoga specifically. A lot of times I won't use Western yoga because that includes places I don't live. But American yoga, a lot of times, the idea of inaction gets you off the hook. This isn't Quakerism. You don't get to be a conscious, I'm not going to involve myself in this like a Quaker. An inaction is an action in yoga. It is a choice that you have made, and it will have a rippling effect. Your inaction will have a rippling effect as much as your action. So that's important to know. That's a very deep point when we talk about action and karma in yoga.
Yeah, that's a huge distinction to make, that inaction is equal to action in that sense. It causes a ripple and effect in so much as action does.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's awesome. And I wanted to bridge into the residential teacher training that you're doing. I mean, it's like a 300-hour residential teacher training, and it's at one of the most prestigious places you can hold a retreat, the Omega Institute. And from what I heard, this is like the first like long form 300-hour training that's been done since 2016. So this is like having like a yoga retreat at Carnegie Hall as a premiere, like when Carnegie Hall's not been performing for like 6-7 years. Like that's pretty amazing. That's quick.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. The teacher training, the Urban Sadhu 300-hour teacher training is going to be July the 28th through August the 25th. You can still sign up. Working with the Mega, it's very interesting because you could sign up for it the day before the training starts. So they're very liberal like that. But I'm so grateful to Omega, and I did my teacher training there in 2009 or 10, I think it was. So it was a long time ago. But they're like an amazing organization. They have I've done a lot of different workshops there with them. And I'm very excited about being able to do this and present this with them. And especially after them having such a long hiatus from offering big teacher trainings, like month-long residential trainings. It's also very interesting doing it in a kind of post-pandemic world where so many teacher trainings have become modules, or they've become online completely. And I'm just an old-fashioned kind of guy. I think you can do a course online. I don't think you can do a teacher training online where you are actually training to teach other people. And I think that's the distinction, And a lot of people will do a yoga teacher training as a course because they want to deepen their knowledge or their wisdom. And that should be taken into account. But if it's somebody who actually wants to stand in front of people, teach, interact with them one-on-one, learn to do anything from hands-on assist in a yoga class to sitting down and playing harmonium and singing a mantra and doing a Dharma talk and presenting in front of a live group of people in a classroom, that teacher training should be conducted in person, if that's what your goal is. So we do that. I before I became a yoga teacher, I was in the theater. It's like, it would be like, learning to act online. You can't do that. You have to be in the room with your acting teacher. You have to get feedback in real time.
Absolutely. That feedback is so essential when holding space, when learning how to teach, when going through all these practices. And so what are some unique opportunities that are presented in the course you're providing, and also having it at the Omega Institute as a venue?
So having it in the Omega Institute, it's going to give the students the opportunity to simply immerse themselves in yoga, nothing else. I mean, that's the beauty of it. They'll get to get up in the morning, be on the beautiful campus at Omega in Catskills, and come to yoga class, then do discourse and meditations and satsangs at night, and really just kind of be able to kind of put down their cell phones, put them away for a little while, and focus on the teachings of yoga. So that's just amazing, and that you will get a chance to do that and have that beautiful support system, great food, great housing, and like I said, a beautiful environment to do it in trees and forest, and the little deer walking up to you while you're going to the cafeteria. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of like a fairy tale when you go there. And then one of the things that, I think what you were asking me is one of the things that's very different about this teacher training that's unique is we really try to get the students to understand the different shastras and how those shastras differ from each other. And shastras is a manual. So we'll specifically study the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. We'll specifically study the Bhagavad Gita. We'll specifically study Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and we'll also study the Shava Sutras. And all three of those four of those texts are either dualistic, non-dualistic text, or levels of dualism with some non-dualism, right? And so what does that mean in terms of, and this was something that was never really explained to me when I did a teacher training, that when you look at a dualistic text, it will imply certain things to spirituality that a non-dualistic text will not imply. A lot of times you will hear in American yoga the oneness of being, or we're all one, right? It's all this, we're all here together as one. But that's a very non-dualistic interpretation. And it would be true if you were studying from the Shava Sutras, which is the most non-dualistic text I've ever seen in my life. Everything is Shiva, and you are Shiva, and I am Shiva. And it's just our ignorance at this moment that we don't know that we're Shiva, and it will be revealed to us when the time is right. That's kind of the Shava Sutras in a quick nugget, that everything is Shiva. What you don't like is Shiva. What you like is Shiva. What you understand is Shiva. What you don't understand is Shiva. Maya is Shiva. Everything is Shiva. You just think it's not Shiva, right? But then you have Patanjali, who almost every yoga teacher training you can think of is going to talk about Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Patanjali is a dualist. He does not believe that this idea of the divine or consciousness is in nature. He believes that nature, prakriti, is keeping you from understanding Purusha. And your nature, your everything about you, your nature, your identification with your body, your identification with your thoughts. I mean, you have it in a nutshell. Yoga Sutra number 2, Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodha. Stop the fluctuations of your mind for yoga to even, the process of the teachings to even begin. He wants you to stop thinking. So he's a dualist. And so he would disagree with anybody who said, yoga, we're all one, we're all in this together. Patanjali would say, no, we're not. He would say, no, there is consciousness over there in its purest form, and it has nothing to do with your thoughts. And it's not, and that's where it divides, it moves away from Socrates and Plato, or in Christianity, Aquinas and Augustine, right? It moves away from because with those people, those sects, the Greeks and the Christians, thoughts and emotions are part of the soul, or part of consciousness, right? Part of spirit. Whereas for Patanjali, they're not part of spirit. They're part of prakriti, and they're keeping you from understanding Purusha. They're under this pure consciousness that sits in its own nature that is empty, right? That's dualism. So we really try to explain that to our teachers, so that when they say something like, we all are all one with the Brahman, that they know they're talking about Advaita Vedanta, that they understand the school of thought that they're saying that from, instead of saying it casually and as a kind of a quote you would put on your Instagram account, to get a couple of likes, that you know what you're actually saying. So we spend a lot of time doing that. So it's a teacher training that's really for people who want to know more about these different schools of thought within yoga, and want to compare them, like a comparative religion course. Because I have no desire to wrangle anybody into a pseudo cult. You don't have to believe what I believe, and you don't even have to know what I believe. It really is a learning process and a lab to go deeper into the complexities and the diversity within the yoga tradition. We talk about diversity in yoga all the time in America. Let me explain something to you. Yoga does not have a diversity problem. Americans have a diversity problem. Americans have a diversity problem, not yoga. Yoga is so incredibly diverse, and I'm only picking 4 texts because it's the most extreme dualism to the most extreme non-dualism, and then a couple that are kind of waffling and whether it's dualism or not dualism, right? You have the Bhagavad Gita where you'll never be Krishna, but Krishna is in the chariot with you. He's your friend. So it's kind of dualism without a little non-dualism. He's advising you. He's gonna be there for you, but you're never going to be Krishna.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the interplay between once students have more context for the duality tradition of Patanjali, and then also they get into the more the non-dual stuff, and then they interface with something like the Bhagavad Gita, and they have Arjuna and Krishna, this chariot, and all these things going on. Then they have more perceptions and ways to interplay with text, or understand different commentaries from different thought leaders, or
Yes.
become their own thought leader in that sense.
And if you're reading a commentary where the person is a Buddhist practitioner, how are they going to color something like the Gita from a Buddhist perspective? And it happens. And this amount of wisdom teachings is so vast that it is going to be a lifetime studying it. If you really want to be a dedicated yoga teacher, you have to accept that you're going to become an internal student for the rest of your life. And I still study every week with my teacher. Every week I sit down with my teacher. And it's all Advaita Vedanta. He's a Advaita Vedanta teacher. But I have to do it because, and I need a teacher too, because the texts are so vast. That if you're just kind of trying to pick at it alone, you will pick up a book, you will read that book, and you will think that you're reading one of the Abrahamic traditions, and this must be the way it is. And you're right, it's not, because each commentary is going to be different depending on what school they're from. They're going to have a different approach and different interpretation on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And developing the curriculum for the 300-hour yoga training, it seems like some of the core elements included these comparative aspects, going to these 4 different quadrants, these 4 extremes almost of, dualism or non-dualism, and a few areas in between. And then also, so what are some of the other core elements you felt are really imperative to include in this teacher training, and how they reflect the ethos of Urban Sadhu Yoga, the integral aspect?
So one of the things we do is every evening there is a satsang, and that's for us to come together as community, right? And that's incredibly important. That if you're going to be on a spiritual path like this, that you need to have the support group of the community. And so it gives the students a little bit of an opportunity to have a conversation with each other and the facilitators, and look and bring in different ideas and concepts that are not these very historical bookish teachings, right? So we'll start to, we'll show a film, like I have a film, a really wonderful film on the life of Paramahamsa Yogananda, where we can really talk about, how did we in America end up in this place called yoga that we're at, or we'll look at I do have a film. You asked about the spiritual activism. We have a film on spiritual activism alone it was done about 10 years ago, but it talks a lot about environmentalism, working with the indigenous people to save forest and land. But it will help people kind of really put into perspective what things like spiritual activism is in a contemporary context. Like how can we show you examples of other people doing this work and taking this work and putting it out there into the world in positive ways. Then another big aspect of this that I did not get in my teacher training, and I was lucky. Like I said, I had been in the theater for 40 years before I did a teacher training. So I would, if you ask me to speak, I'll talk the whole time. I have no problem speaking in front of people, and I have no inhibitions about any of that kind of thing. But what I did find when I started to develop teacher trainings is there are a lot of people who are terrified to speak in public, and they don't know how to use their own voice. And so in this teacher training, I actually have an actress, a trained professional actress, come in and do a vocal class. and she works with us throughout the program, helping people find their physical voice. Where am I actually speaking from, and how do I save my voice so that I can sustain this hour-and-a-half class with 35 people in the room? Can they hear me in the back of the room? Am I saying what I mean and mean what I say? So there's a big chunk of time of teaching, small group teachings, where the students have to develop their own class, and then they have to teach it to each other within their small group. And we, as the facilitators, walk around and help them with their presentation of the class, so they can be a stronger, more dynamic teacher in the seat of the teacher.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That what really popped out to me is when you were talking about you have this actress, colleague, friend, practitioner who comes in and shares and holds space for people, teaches them how to best utilize their voice or come into their voice, not only in tone, like in tenacity or and being able to, but also being able to articulate their truth. Is this resonating? Is this not resonating? And to sustain a strong, firm, authentic, aligned voice during a hour or 2 hour yoga class. That's super powerful, and that's something that will definitely translate into every other faculty in their life. And also,
we'll take it anywhere. You can take it into anything you do.
I love that. That's really integral, and also it kind of made me think about talking more about like fostering a sense of community, like having all these like-minded individuals or kindred spirits, being able to foster community, make lifelong friends, companionship. How do you in your courses cultivate a sense of community, and what does it what does community or sangha or hold in the broader yoga journey for your students and in post support?
Well, so this is probably where things are. I think that this is where you're asking me a question that we're stepping off into the unknown, because all of the teachings we've ever done have been in-house. They've been within, where the main studio is here in Jersey City. We're literally underneath the Holland Tunnel in Jersey City from New York City. So we're really New York City, just in another state. It's 10 minutes from the West Village, by car. You're under the water and you're in the West Village. So we're stepping out into an area where we now need to look at what the satsang looks like when we have students coming from all over the country, possibly, and they don't have a Urban Sadhu shala there. We're going to, that's where we're really trying to encourage people to open up Urban Sadhu shalas and expand the teachings. And then we're probably going to have to look toward, and Bobby, my partner, and I, we've talked about this, like look toward a more online presence to nurture new teachers after this is over, so that they don't go back to, Wichita and all of a sudden feel like they're alone and isolated again. Like, how do you kind of like create? And I do think that's possible. I think that's where social media and the tools like we're using right now are going to come into play. That I didn't have when I did my teacher training, because it just wasn't available. But I do think that is able to happen ongoing because of the technological world we live in today.
Oh, wonderful. One thing that stood out to me, like when going through your materials, is the concept of yoga beyond the three gunas. I'd love if you could elaborate on this concept and its significance in your teachings or personal practice.
So one of the things that, this is a theory, yoga theory, and it's also in Sanatha Dharma itself, is that there are three gunas, there are qualities or nature. And each school, here again, they're going to have a little different argument about it, right? One, you could look at it as, let's just take H2O, right? When H2O is ice, it's tamasic. It's cold, it's dense, it's hard, right? It doesn't move easily. When it's in a liquid state, it's rajasic, it's fast moving, it's unpredictable. You can't really control it, right? It's a neutral temperature, but it's still fast moving and uncontrollable. I would still say that's rajasic. Then if you take H2O and you put it in a pot and you start to boil it, it becomes steam, and it's sattvic, it's light, it's effervescent. One is not better than the other. In reality, all three of them have their usefulness, but we get attached to one over the other. I like ice more than I do heat. I like this over that. Krishna and both Patanjali both say that yoga is beyond the three gunas. They also say that sattvic is closer to yoga than tamasic and rajasic. But if I'm teaching a vinyasa class, right, and I that's how I came to yoga. I loved those fast-paced vinyasa classes where you did 1,000 things in an hour and you went from one asana to another without stopping. That's rajasic. That's rajasic energy. And if you don't temper it with meditation and shavasana, which is tamasic, then you end up in a place where you just have attachment to that rajasic energy. New York's very rajasic, right? It's very rajasic. So you get a lot of vinyasa practices in New York. Post-pandemic, everybody wants to be tamasic. They want to go to yin classes. They just want to go and relax, right? That's what the pandemic's done to us. It's made us very tamasic. And here again, it's not closer to yoga. It's not yoga yet, right? So if we're those people who are just selling that now yin style classes, this kind of laying there, not really making an effort is yoga. I think that your text your shastras would argue with that. It would, unless there is a higher intention being set that moves it out of tamasic and into sattvic, because we really are trying to raise people's energy up to a state of sattvic. The practices for that are pranayamas and meditation. So for an Urban Sadhu yoga class to be an Urban Sadhu yoga class, there has to be pranayama taught and there has to be meditation taught. So it's just one of the 15 offerings that has to be presented to the students. Because if you walk away and you don't offer them a quality meditation time, then you've just taught a fitness class. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you did not talk about pranayama, if you avoided telling them how to breathe technically, because pranayama is technical. At first, it's technical. You got to teach them how to breathe. Then you've missed out on a great opportunity. And even Patanjali in the 8 limb system, yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama. You have to teach pranayama. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he tells you got to practice controlling your breath. Arjuna, can't hyperventilate here on the battlefield. He says it. Then, you have Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Start practicing asanas. Change your diet. Do these shakriyas. Now go to a qualified teacher to teach you pranayama. Every text, every yogic text is going to tell you, You have to teach pranayama, and then they'll guide you into meditation. That breath and meditation are linked together. Because if you can't control the breath, you can't control the mind. If you can't control the breath, you can't focus the mind. And the first step to meditation is focusing the mind.
Brilliant. I really like that conception of applying the gunas, like, and also I was thinking about, oh yeah, the COVID, that was totally tamastic. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it was well spoken.
It's totally the pandemic has released in Pandora's box the tamasic energy that like we've never seen before. And tamasic energy is very powerful energy. It doesn't look powerful, but it's incredibly powerful. And out of the three, depending if you read one of those texts where they're going to try to put one before the other and give them ranking, and there are some texts that will try to do that, tamasic energy is always at the bottom. Because at least with rajasic, it's passionate about something. It's got a little bit of fire. So the austerity practice can at least be you can start to imply that you have to start to take that fire and turn it into your austerity practice. But tamasic, you can't get it to move. You can't get it to budge. And that doesn't mean that things like yin yoga are bad, right? But if you have somebody who only wants to go to yin classes, that's tamasic energy. I don't like vinyasa. I hear that sometimes. I only like yin. No, you have to do, actually, everything would tell you if you like yin, you have to do vinyasa. If you like vinyasa, you should be doing yin. You got to do the opposite.
Totally. And it makes me think too, like thinking of that period of time, particularly as being tamastic, and also about the tamas being such a extremely powerful force. I'm like, it just occurred to me now. I was thinking about society and how tamastic so many things are, and that sometimes things that are stale or unhealthy or that are weighing us down are the more powerful forces, like sex, drugs, alcohol, the things that are most propagated in culture, marketing, advertising, and economically, our music, our movies, and that all just kind of flashed before my eyes as you were saying that. And also in the scope of timeline, I've heard about from some sources or some traditions within Hinduism about that we're in Kali Yuga, right? We're in a timeline where things are a bit more chaos or tamastic in that sense. So I'm wondering if you have comments on or thoughts about being more sattvic or being out of the three gunas altogether, right? Being something higher, despite the timelines that we're in, and despite culture, society, and other things, holding those high ethics. And
so there's a wonderful teacher. If this is something that you're interested in, there's a wonderful teacher. It was actually I mentioned Paramahamsa Yogananda. It was his guru. His name's Yukteswar. I think I got that right. He wrote a book about the yugs and he argued that we're actually no longer in Kali Yuga, which is very interesting. He breaks things down a little bit because he was, here he is like in the 1920s writing this, and he's seeing science changing and he's changing things, and he's seeing electricity, he's seeing the atomic age happening on and on. And he talks about all these things that he's seeing that would let you know that we're out of the Kali Yuga, that the Kali Yuga he's describing as the Stone Age, that it's attached to stone. And that now, but what happens and what he's saying is that a past you, this doesn't end. It carries its energetic over into the another one, kind of like almost as if, have you ever heard of the term ombre?
Ombre.
A color, like like you think of a sky going from blue to white without a line, right? So that it's the color is ombreing into the next color, right? And so one could say that, when you look at like what we've achieved as humans and where we are in technology, we're on the cusp of something big. But we are attached to concepts and ideas that keep putting us back into the Stone Age, that keep putting us back into the medieval, right? When we have technology and science that is giving us answers and we reject it, that's Tamasic. That's Tamasic. When you talk about the Tamasic energy of modern society, there's Tamasic.
Brilliant.
When you have science that is telling you are destroying the planet that you depend on, and you deny it. You go back and start talking about kind of religious ideas, or that it must be. You make up things to avoid the reality. That's Tamasic. And that's the battle between the ending of the Kali Yuga and this new thing that we're on the cusp of experiencing. That we're about to go into a space that, and that doesn't mean it doesn't have its challenges. AI has its challenges. All these things has its challenges, but the things that I have seen, and you and I have seen in our lifetime, the changes that we've seen in our lifetime, our great grandparents would have never experienced them. They would have seen two changes. They would have seen two shifts in their reality. My grandparents got a radio, and then they got a television. Past that, they didn't see any changes. In my lifetime, I saw the radio, the television, the satellite, the iPhone, now I can get on this thing and I can talk to somebody in India like that on the other side of the world, or in China. And I can have the computer, we don't even have to know the same language, and it will translate for us in real time. That's things that our ancestors never had. So why are we talking about what cavemen eat? I don't understand. That's like my joke. That's my joke. Why are you talking about what cavemen ate? Why aren't you talking about what you should be eating?
Like with the paleo diet or keto. Yeah.
Why are you talking about that? It has nothing to do with your reality. Because we really are. And so there's always two ways to look at history, right? Two ways of looking at history is always like the past is always glorious and we're going downhill. Or the other way to look at it is the past was the past and we're only going upward. There's only one way to go, is up. I'm a little more hopeful. I like to be a little more hopeful. I like to think that we're going upward. It doesn't feel like it some days. It feels like we're being dragged backwards, kicking and screaming. But when we look around, we can't deny that we're moving forward. So I'm more hopeful.
Beautiful. I love that optimism, and I love that perception of, maybe we're coming out of that, and there's momentum, because there's always momentum from the past, and now we have more tools, we're equipped with more things, there's better information, resources to have this Sattvic lifestyle living, or and coming into the new age. right? So I really value that perspective and seeing the bright side, because ultimately by looking towards what we want or what we pay attention to is what we get. So if we pay attention to where we want to go, then that'll uplift everyone.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We have to pay attention to the ascension.
Mm.
You know, you have to. And I think there's been some things. And I'm not really. I'm a very practical person, but I think there are some things that has happened recently that is telling you this, that are telling you should prepare. When your government, who has been covering up the idea of extraterrestrial beings, starts to say, we want to start talking about this, and we are like accepting that there are things that we don't understand and we don't know. They've been covering this up for years because they didn't know what to do with this information, right? And now you have them like open, the same people who were in part of your cover up, they are now open to at least acknowledging. So they're telling you something. They're trying to prepare you for something. What that is, I have no idea. But when that happened a few months ago, when Congress said, "Oh yeah, let's have a discussion about this openly," I thought, this is weird. This is something we should take note of, and nobody's really paying attention to this. You know, a few of the fringe people are paying attention to it, but this is actually the a preparation for something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're going to find some of these, and we're going to have some of these wisdom teachings that these sages have been teaching for thousands of years be revealed soon. I really believe that in our lifetime.
Yeah, and I'm excited for that. And I think going through like a residential training with you would be like a perfect way for people to be able to tune in and pay attention to ascension. I love how that rhymes too. I don't know if you saw like my YouTube shorts, but actually I had a clip of a UFO that I saw from my dash cam when I was driving with my wife the other day.
Oh, really?
San Diego. Yeah. And just clear as day, we saw it pop up out of the sky. And just a few moments before, like, hey, you remember when we saw like a UFO here about a month ago? And I was like, yeah, we did. And then 10 seconds later, I kid you not, like straight out of the sky, you can see an orb pop up in the video. And
I can't wait to look at it.
Yeah. In real life, it was amazing. It was really colorful. It looked maybe 5 or 6 times bigger than it pops up on the dash cam, because, you know, like on a dash cam, it only can take in about that much light, but
right.
Whereas our eyes take in so much more light, so we can see the full colors. But I mean, yeah, I thought that was coincidental you brought that up. I just saw that last night and caught on my dash cam of all things.
Well, see, that's the thing. See, that's technology changing everything, right? Changing everything. The things that we couldn't explain, we're now catching on camera. You know, and then you deny it. You still deny it. You're looking at it. You're seeing it. You know, you're seeing. Like when I tell people, you know, one of the reasons why you have to like start thinking about your diet is you're seeing animals being filmed trying to escape the slaughterhouse. They know are being upset when their children are being taken away from them in dairy farms or whatever. Like they're reacting to this. You know, you're seeing people filming animals trying to get humans to help them. Like you just, you know, when I was a kid, you know, a dog was a dog. Dog was a dog. That was your dog. Mm-hmm. Now, people are more conscious and aware of the subtleties that dog has. You know, so why wouldn't a cow have it? Why wouldn't a chicken have it? Why wouldn't a pig have it?
Yeah, or why wouldn't another human have that, or
why wouldn't another human have
another human being? You know,
right? Exactly.
Yeah, and that's totally true. Like we're more sensitive than other collectively to these different things, and there's some growing pains of that. But overall the upwards curve is really positive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm very positive, even though right now, like I said, I feel like we all feel like we're in a downward spiral, especially in an election year.
There we
go. Especially.
Yeah, that's one of those things for U.S. citizens where we feel a tug and pull on us.
Oh my God. You have the whole world talking about it. It's not just U.S. citizens. The whole world is terrified. All you have to do is look at what people are saying on social media. They're all terrified.
Yeah. And so you definitely managed to create like a yoga method and a practice that's both deeply rooted in like tradition, but also really relevant to modern urban life. So, so what challenges have you faced in maintaining this balance, and how have you and your students overcome?
Maintaining that balance personally. Let's start with that. Personally, running a business, you are running a business. I don't care what business it is. And yoga is, there's the business, there's yoga, and then there's the business of yoga. And once you open up a brick and mortar studio, that is a yoga business. And it has the same needs as if I was selling, slacks and t-shirts. It needs employees, it needs revenue to keep it open. It has to pay the rent, it has to pay the electricity. So personally, the challenge is to not let what I have to do as a business owner consume my practice. While in some ways running the business does become my practice, I have to maintain my personal sadhana. And that becomes a challenge. And I think that's a challenge for anybody who wants to become a yoga teacher. That if you are a yoga practitioner now, and if you want to teach yoga, then don't allow teaching yoga to ruin or eliminate your personal sadhana. You have to have your practice, whether that continues to be a strong asana practice. I still practice asana, and I really have to make sure that I get that in, because that's the easiest thing to kind of say, oh, I got to do this, I'm not going to go to class. And I need to go to, when I do that, I do that with other teachers leading the class. I try not to let myself get into a tamasic energy where I'm doing my self-practice at home. It's not the same. So I go to other teachers to be teachers. Then I think for the challenges with the students is and the student population is telling them and reminding them that it's okay to tell your boss that you're going to be gone for an hour and 35 minutes, that you're not available, that you are doing your yoga sadhana, that you've gone to class. I have this one student, very sweet, very, very sweet woman who Indian. She's here from India, and her family's here. Her husband's in IT. She's has a wonderful spiritual practice, deep spiritual practice, and a very consistent physical practice, asana practice. She comes, 4 or 5 times a week. And she said, oh, I'm going to have to stop coming because my husband's having an operation, and it's going to take him 4 months to recover from this foot operation. And I said, don't give up your yoga asana practice to be a caregiver. You're only gone away from him for 2 hours when you come to class, and you need that time to yourself. I know you want to take care of him. I know you want to be there for him if he needs like a glass of water or needs to get to the bathroom. But for you to be a healthy caregiver, you have to have your own space. You have to have your own sense of self. And she kind of looked at me. She said, I'll think about it. Because she knew I was right. it wasn't an absolute no. She's like, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. So I think it's the hardest thing is to remind people today in the modern world that we live in, that's so fast, that everything's happening, that they have all these obligations, to remind yourself that you also, just like I have to remind myself, that you have to take the time for your practice or you won't have a practice.
Mm. You have to take that time for yourself. Otherwise, you won't have a practice.
You won't have it. You'll think about it. You'll, I wish I could have, would have, should have. You have to do it.
Mm. And considering like the wide range of yoga paths and things that pop up in people's lives, operations or health concerns, how do you guide your students in finding a path or a way of approaching yoga that's right for them, especially in this modern context where there's a lot of information, a lot of potential for confusion, a lot of articles online that say, oh, do this, don't do that.
Right. Well, I think that, like, number one, we have to accept that most Americans who are introduced to yoga come to yoga through yoga asana. I was lucky that the first yoga asana class I took, it was a spiritual tradition. It wasn't just a gym yoga. It was at a gym, but it was just not with a teacher who did that. There was like a little chanting in the gym, and there was a little like talking about like higher intention and why you were here, and was it really about touching your toes? And I was like, this is interesting. So I think that we have to, one, know that that's where people are starting. Know that the process for yoga, and accept the process of yoga, could take lifetimes. Right. So, and yoga asana is a starting point, both in Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Shava Sutras. Right. Shava Sutras say, if you're a beginner, please go to yoga asana. And if you start a Hatha Yoga practice, it starts with asana but ends with Raja Yoga, meditation and reunification with the self. Right, which is in Hatha Yoga Pradipika is Shiva. So it's okay that that's what they start, but the ones that kind of get it as a sadhana, they're going to stick with it. The ones that are treating asana as a workout and a fitness class or a bar class, they are going to be the ones that it will get to the point where it doesn't matter if they go to the bar class or they go to yoga. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. And then when dealing with injuries, if you have a teacher that, like you said, that is like what we're doing here, which is an integrated form of yoga that has already introduced you to meditation, introduced you to the study of shastras and text and jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, karma yoga, then if there's some kind of thing going on, you'll just supplement one of those other yoga traditions for the physical practice until you recover. And your physical practice is going to change. My practice is not what it was when I first went to a yoga class. I'm almost 60 years old now. I started yoga when I was 43 years old. It's different. The body's different. And I think that's also one of the things that yoga will help you embrace. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. The body's going to change. The mind's going to change. I'm stepping away from that identification and becoming the witness to it. So it's okay if it changes. It's okay. It's okay if you never master a handstand in this life. What matters is that you tried the handstand, that you participated and didn't walk out of the room in fear because we were going to do a handstand, right? But do you have to become a Cirque du Soleil performer? No, not at all. But don't fear the handstand. Don't fear the headstand, right? So that, I think that's one of the things that maybe should be encouraged in the physical practice that maybe is being lost a little bit now. But there's been a huge voice in the yoga land, that's what I call Instagram yoga land, about not really kind of doing those physical challenging things anymore, that you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. Well, I don't think you have to master it, but part of the challenge of yoga is to meet the challenge when you're faced with the challenge. This is the story of Arjuna and Krishna in the chariot on the battlefield. Arjuna wants to walk away. And Krishna says, I encourage you to stay and do this, at least try it. Don't walk away from this. I can help you come to terms with ways that you can do it, but you need to stick with it. And
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And where are the best places that people can subscribe to your content, follow you, engage with your website, or come to your classes? Do you mind sharing like the best resources that people can get in touch with your work?
Sure. So we are on urbansadhuyoga.com. And if you have a mind-body account, no matter where you are in the world, you can take classes with us. There's also a archival class structure that if you're in San Diego and you're 3 hours difference, you could take it 3 hours later, the class. So you could take classes with us. Also, we're on social media, Urban Sadhu Yoga Jersey City, I think. And then my personal IG account is urban.sadhu. And then we have a YouTube channel. There's information there about the teacher training and some videos about the teacher training. Then on the website, if you wanna follow us in wherever we're focusing on or exploring at each month, there's a little drop-down menu with explorations, and it'll take you to about 2 years of essays and articles, or 4 years, maybe 4 years now, of essays and articles that really kind of will give you a flavor of the kind of things that an Urban Sadhu yoga teacher is asked to be able to expound on in front of a class.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for being on the show. Is there any last pieces? Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share?
And if you want more information about the Urban Sadhu Yoga Teacher Training at Omega, drop us a line, and you can also go to their online website, eomega.org. And the information for the teacher training, if you search Urban Sadhu, then the training will come up, and the event that we'll be co-doing with Devdutt Panayak. I didn't really talk about Devdutt, but Devdutt Panayak will be a part of our teacher training. And so you also get to go to his event, Mythology Toolbox, how mythology and storytelling can end conflict and trauma.
Beautiful. That's really exciting too. That's going to be a really great compliment to the work, the practice. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jake, and have a good night. And I will hopefully talk to you soon.
All right. Talk soon.